Reflections. My experience during the research process and applying the APA style to my research. So we're going to talk about the research process, just a Cliff Notes version of what I went through during the research process. Some do's and don'ts when using APA formatting style, and final thoughts. So with the research process, certainly there were some challenges. Fortunately enough, there were some victories as well. So beginning with the challenges, one significant challenge I faced was the abundance of information available in our online library. Having to sort through the information and deciding which articles, and journals, or newspapers were the most relevant consumed a lot of time. So with the amount of information and then the process of sorting and then deciding the most relevant, that consumed a lot of time, more so than I originally anticipated. However, through that process, I learned how to better navigate through the online process. I was able to search using various keywords that help make the navigation process a lot more seamless. The fact that I have an in-home library with seemingly endless amounts of resources is definitely a win-win. With most of the articles, there were ready-made citing available for me, so I was able to copy and paste, so I didn't have to manually create the reference page from scratch. And of course, the variety of options, although I used it as a challenge, but it's also a victory because there are so many options available. I'm able to tailor make my paper based on what my perspective is and what my influences are. And with the APA style, a few do's and don'ts. The first that I consider a don't is copy and paste. Now, even though there are ready-made sites available, I made the mistake of simply copying and pasting it into a reference page and found out that that wasn't the best idea. I think that just copy and pasting, you're opening up yourself to errors. So always with the copy and paste, just double check your format. That's the do. You're going to double check to make sure that the format is appropriate to the APA style. Also, don't wait to cite. When you find an article or a manuscript that you want to use, definitely start your reference page even before the actual paper or the research is completed. Just start your page early so that you don't have to go back later and try to retrack and find those sources. So what you want to do is, again, cite during the research process. Although the works cited page is the final part or the final chapter of the APA format, you certainly don't want to wait to the last minute to have to search over for those sites. Also, don't assume that all written entries have been peer reviewed. I discovered through the research process that newspapers, for example, may not be peer reviewed. So I spent a significantly amount of time searching for peer-reviewed newspaper articles, and I came up empty. So definitely just know that they can be scholarly, however they may not be peer reviewed. And also investigate the sources. Google and other search engines offer tons of articles and wikis and things on that platform. However, investigate. Make sure that they are scholarly sources. Certainly, you don't want to, during the research process, not investigate and make sure that the source is a valid one, especially when you're submitting the papers to a college or a university. And finally, what you do want to do is use more than one source. And what I found to be the The best option when reviewing more than one source is to, when you find a document that you're going to cite in your paper, search that document's particular sites. See whom that person used to cite, and then read those sources. And with that, you'll be able to build a large reference page or works cites page without having to do the legwork. Someone else has already done it for you. And finally, just a few final thoughts of just some takeaways. One would be, if you start off with clear objectives, it will decrease the time that you have to search, and it will improve your search as far as relevance. So outlining what your objectives are in the beginning will help streamline that search for you. Second, you're going to want to keep a record of all your searches. Even if you do not use all the sources, you may be able to refer to them later. Have an APA formatting instruction manual nearby, a book. The Little Brown Handbook is a classic example, but there are so many sources online with Purdue OWL and other options available to you. So you're definitely going to want to have that handy, because there are so many different ways that you have to cite depending on what your source is, depending on if it's an article, a journal, if it's an online reference. All of those things require a different type of formatting, so you're going to definitely want to have that document available. And finally, you're going to want to carve out enough time to perform a proper research. Going through the research process took a few hours for me. Now, certainly someone that may be a little more savvy may not need that amount of time, and if you take heed to my advice of keeping a record of your searches, later on down the line when you have other papers that you have to write, if you have a documented storage of searches, then you wouldn't have to start from scratch every time. But certainly you're going to want to make time so that you format your paper properly, and that you use the articles that's most relevant to your topic. And that concludes my reflections on the research process and the APA style.